Welcome to This Week in Missouri Politics. We're very excited about this week's show because we're going to bring you four folks that are likely to be in Jeff City in January making laws. We'll start with Peter Meredith, won probably the hottest, most exciting primary of the whole summer in South City. Came out with a huge win at the end. And welcome to This Week in Missouri Politics.
Thanks for having me.
Steve Roberts here in St. Louis. Interesting primary. He took a four-way primary with a comfortable win. Now it looks like you're heading to Jeff City, and welcome to the show.
Sir, thanks for having me.
Hannah Kelly won a landslide victory down in southwest Missouri, very tight primary, replacing Tony Duggar and related to the infamous Kelly family.
Yes. Hey, every vote counts. My election is proof.
Absolutely, and I found that Van Kelly is one person in Jeff City that everybody has something nice to say about, which puts him in a very rare class.
Yes, yes.
Nick Shore out in St. Charles County won a huge win, a primary that some thought was tight, but when they counted the votes, wasn't tight at all. So got a Democrat opponent in the fall.
I do.
But in a pretty good Republican district, and welcome This Week in Missouri Politics. Let's start with you.
Me.
So you run for office, you put your life on hold, you change probably some plans. What's your expectations?
Well, one of the reasons I'm running is to solidify and I guess to make Missouri a place where we have the same liberties, the same freedoms that I had growing up. I have a 2-year-old daughter now, and anybody who is a family man, I know some people on the panel today have children. And having children, it puts a focus on other areas, education reform, a lot of things. So putting my life on hold, I think it's to serve this district, to give this district a voice, to stop federal overreach, and that's something that I look forward to doing.
Hannah Kelly, interesting race down in southwest Missouri. We always love to have folks from southern Missouri on the show. And my question to you is, you successful real estate company, why'd you run, and what are you looking forward to working on next year?
I am looking forward to working on constituent service. That's one of the most rewarding things that I've already had the opportunity to visit with folks about is, hearing their needs and seeing that satisfaction when they realize they're being heard and they realize that you're listening and not just talking. I won by 45 votes, as you know, the big landslide. And one of the big things that a group of senior citizens told me after the election was they said you were the first person to come up and listen and hear what we had to say before you responded. And that's the approach that I want to take to the office. I'm a conservative, and the big overriding reason why I put my name on the ballot was because I believe that we should have less regulation and less government so that the people can do more.
Steve Roberts, successful attorney. You've done some work in the public sector in the past. Why'd you run for state rep, and what do you want to work on when you get to Jeff City?
Well, for me, so I was a prosecutor before running for state representative, and one of the things I didn't like about it is I kept catching young men like myself really on the back end, too late to make an impact in their lives, at least by the way the laws are currently written. So some of the things I want to focus on are criminal justice reform, expanding Medicaid, and education. We've got a big problem here in the city of not being able to pay our teachers competitive salaries, so a lot of them are forced to move out to the county.
And you're taking Kim Gardner's seat.
That's right.
She's going to be the prosecutor. Have you talked to her yet? She give you any advice?
I actually ran into her at a United Way event last night, but besides that, we haven't had a chance to sit down yet.
Exciting for her. It's always neat to see people that have helped make laws move into administrating them. And we have that with Lincoln Huff in Greene County, Dave Hinton in Washington County, Linda Black maybe in a runoff now down in St. Francis County. So it's interesting to see folks move from the legislature back to serving in their home counties. I think Kim will be an exciting prosecutor. It's a cool job.
Absolutely, and I'm looking forward to carrying the torch on some of the issues she's worked on in the legislature.
Peter Meredith replacing the always quotable Mike Colonna. You have big shoes to fill as far as providing quotes for reporters. Mike was always very talented at that. What do you want to do in the legislature?
Steve hit it on the head, actually. I'd say my 3 priorities are expanding Medicaid. I think that's something that we really need to be working across the aisle to do. Criminal justice reform is one of the areas that drew me into politics in the first place, and education. Our schools in the city, I think we've got a fairly united force from the city saying that we need to do something about our schools down there. So anything that I can do, even if it's tweaks to the system, I'm looking for ways to do that. Now, I'm realistic. We're a super minority, and we're a lot more liberal than the other 2 over here, and then most of our colleagues in Jeff City. So,
what is criminal justice reform? That's an interesting topic. They've been doing some work. Senator Schmitz kind of led the cause on some of the initial steps. What are some of the things that could be done?
Well, so I as a lawyer, I've actually been in the municipal courts quite a bit. I think that's a good starting point, figuring out how to make sure that our municipal courts are handling things fairly and uniformly across the region. We've got this fragmented region, and one of the problems is right there. And when the courts and the municipalities treat traffic fines and things like that as a source of revenue that fund their entire city, we've got a problem. So we start there. There are some bigger picture things, like I'm a believer in body cameras on police officers, and looking for some more training and accountability in the way that we police. But I'm also interested in trying to bring those groups together, the police and the disaffected communities.
You've been a prosecutor.
Yeah.
It seems to me it's 2016. You literally, if you watch TMZ, can see Kim Kardashian going to the dentist. Why can you not have a body camera on every cop, every detective, every interrogation, and just let the facts speak for themselves? I mean, why not have the video? Why do you rely on, you know, a police officer sometimes, and I see their point, sometimes a camera phone doesn't tell you everything about a situation. Why wasn't in the Ferguson report body cameras? It seems common sense.
I agree. I think that's something we need to figure out how to incorporate. I know a big issue they have is just that so much data. So going through that and having the right server set up to maintain those things is a big issue.
Nick Schroer, you know, in St. Charles County, you're part of the St. Louis metropolitan area. Some of these issues don't hit as close to home, but it just makes sense to me that they could figure out how to have every cop, every detective, every interrogation on video, and just let the facts speak for themselves.
I know one of the big concerns when I talk to the police departments out there, budgetary concerns, trying to find money in the budget. And I think that the city of St. Louis just did something where they're trying to reallocate the assessor's office, taking, you know, wills, trusts, estates, and things like that, so they can have money to allocate for body cameras. So that's one of the biggest concerns that I've had in talking to the police departments in my area, O'Fallon, Lake St. Louis departments. They're just finding the money to actually have that on top of storing all that data.
Anna Kelly, as a conservative, is it possible that there's too many cops that don't make enough, and maybe there should be fewer police enforcing far fewer laws and make them better paid and better equipped?
Well, and that's a great question. As a business person for the last 10 years, again, back to the reasons why we ran, I believe that the government should be treated like we look at our own businesses and want to see them succeed. You get what you pay for. You get what you pay for, and you get what you strategize for. And honestly, I think we need to get behind our boys and girls in blue and make sure that we're giving them what they need to go out and do the job that we've asked them to do.
Do you talk to cops that have a problem wearing a body camera?
I have not met a cop yet in my own rural district that has a problem with it, but the funding is the issue. Like you said, the funding is the issue. I have a situation right now where, you know, funding on multiple levels is lacking in major ways, and, you know, they're going, how do we see the issue? We don't have a problem with it, but how do we get to where we need to be if the money's not there?
Interesting.
So, if I may, I will say I've met some cops that do have problems with this, and
What's their points?
the other concern other than budgetary is access. They want to make sure that we have specific rules as to when that footage is accessible by the public. You know, I've talked to some of these folks, that men and women that don't want their lunch break to be on camera. And they just want to make sure that controls are in place as well. So I get that. I think there's some rules we need to make sure we establish before we just say everyone has camera and it's
Absolutely.
subject
I know.
to sunshine
The
requests.
DWIs that I've had out in, I haven't had any DWIs, but the ones that I've worked on out in St. Charles County, the cameras, and if I'm correct in stating this, the cameras click on when the lights go on. So there's ways that they can get around that to where lunch breaks aren't on. And those are things that they have to figure out before they just throw body cameras out there and say, wear it the entire day. Because if we're only allowing for the body camera to come on when, let's say, the police door opens, or let's say when the lights turn on, then I think that's going to cut down on the size of the data that's going into these storage systems,
But
which...
Peter Meredith, in an age where I can tell how many seconds my Uber is from picking me up,
Right.
Couldn't you have a government employee that when he's on the clock getting a government salary, his camera's on, and when he's not, his camera's off?
I think you certainly could, but you're going to get a lot of resistance to that idea. That's all. And we're talking about why there's resistance. Not only that, I think that there is a fear that technology doesn't always work. And when it doesn't work, where's the benefit of the doubt? And so there are folks that are concerned about that. I mean, we've seen situations already where the camera wasn't on in the midst of a major encounter. And where does that put the trust? Who
I
do we
think
believe?
it takes away from the trust, doesn't it? I mean, common sense would tell you that
I certainly agree.
in an age where you expect to see video footage and you see it a lot, it erodes the trust of the situation.
I certainly agree. But many of the officers that I've talked to are worried about that. They say they're straight shooters, and
Well, we talked about economics. We have to take a break for our own This Week in Missouri Politics Economics. But we'll leave you this week, and we'll be right back with this week's leading Missouri economic indicators.
For more than a century, the St. Louis Carpenters Union has shaped our communities. Through trusted alliances, we deliver skilled professional craftspeople while our business partners provide the kind of quality jobs that keep our economy humming. It's a blueprint that has worked since 1882. Turning Missouri into a right-to-work state stalls progress, wipes out jobs, and kills momentum. Right to work is wrong for everyone. Let's keep Missouri moving forward. Visit carpdc.org to learn more.
All across Missouri, our new car and truck dealers are building strong local economies. When you buy a car or truck in Missouri, you're helping to support over 20,000 Missouri families who rely on the auto industry for good-paying local jobs. You're also helping fund our communities, schools, first responders, and our roads because dealers generate millions of dollars in tax revenue. Missouri's automobile dealers have been the foundation of our communities for generations and for generations to come. The Missouri Automobile Dealers Association, the heart of Missouri.
Welcome back to This Week in Missouri Politics, where we're always on camera here on the set. Let's talk about a race that is probably the most interesting race of our lifetime. Peter Meredith, the governor's race. What an interesting race that we're seeing. Give me your take on where it is right now.
Well, a former Republican running as a Democrat and potentially a former Democrat running as a Republican is confusing. And with what we're seeing right now with Koster getting, as you mentioned earlier, the ag endorsements and potentially even the NRA endorsement, it's confusing. And from a district like mine, I've got a lot of residents that are going, who do we actually support in this? Who's the more liberal candidate? We're one of the most liberal districts in the state. Mm-hmm. But I've gotten to know Koster a little bit over the course of this, and I believe this guy has been consistent in his views and has an incredible way of calmly and reasonably explaining them to people that I think resonates. And you know, he's actually from this state and has spent a lot of time working his way up to this position. I think he's built up a lot of credibility and a lot of trust. And that's something that Greitens is going to have a problem with.
Steve Rhodes, what do you think the race is?
Yeah, well, I think another big thing, just to add on to Peter, is that, you know, Chris Koster served in the Missouri legislature. Mm-hmm. You know, he's been our attorney general. I mean, he's definitely the more experienced candidate.
This is an interesting race where Eric Greitens has done an excellent job of convincing people that that's a bad thing. If you've been in government and you understand government, that you're part of the problem. I would say that Eric Greitens carries Southwest Missouri. The question would be, how much does he carry it?
You know, that's a question we'll see on Election Day, but the thing that comes to my mind with this conversation, I was sitting in the barbershop the other day, and a veteran was sitting in there and said, Hannah, I wasn't sure who I was going to vote for. I wasn't sure who I was going to vote for, but Mr. Koster asked me for my vote. Mr. Koster,
Mr. Greitens,
Mr. Greitens asked me for my vote and actually took the time to listen to me and hear what I had to say. And this gentleman is a veteran. This gentleman has many concerns. As we all know, our veterans are facing many issues today. And he felt, a comradeship there with Mr. Greitens. And
he's clearly a very talented politician. He's got a lot of connections in Washington, on the East Coast, the West Coast. He can raise money like we've never seen in Missouri politics. He's clearly a talented person.
Well, and the one thing that I have to absolutely commend him on is he understands that, albeit as wonderful as endorsements are, the vote of the people is what matters.
Interesting this week, though, I would say the cradlemen of the Cattlemen Association's Wright County, right? I mean, there are cattlemen there, and they came out this week for Koster at the state fair.
They did. But when you actually travel my district, you'll see and hear a majority of Greitens support in my district.
Nick Shore, interesting race. I know all the candidates spend a lot of time in St. Charles County. Where do you see the race at right now?
I think it's the age of the outsider. So despite Koster being a career politician and whatever skills he may have obtained during that time, I think, and you can see it from the president's race, you can see it in these statewide races, that the outsider is actually winning these races. People are fed up with career politicians, the same suit and tie, going down to Jeff City, going down to D.C.
Do you believe Eric Greitens is an outsider truly to the political process?
I think most of the people in the state of Missouri believe he is. And I think that's what's going to actually shift the tide here in this race.
It's an interesting thing when you talk about the outsider part. I think Eric Greitens ran an excellent primary campaign. I mean, when the Post-Dispatch is mocking your ads, you're doing exactly what you should be doing in a Republican primary.
I agree.
I thought his gun ads were outstanding and probably the best ads we've seen in any governor's race in some time. The one thing I wondered about was he really has a different take on people that have served in government. You can't argue that Jeff City's been ran by Republicans, now with a supermajority, for over a decade. Let's talk about somebody that you know well, Robert Cornejo. Eric Greitens, I don't quote him right, says career politicians have turned Jefferson City into a corrupt, do-nothing embarrassment. It's been my take that Robert Cornejo is one of the big brains in the legislature. Very intelligent, hardworking. The state, I've seen him make different changes to our state that's been very good. I do not view him as corrupt or do-nothing or an embarrassment. Do you agree with Eric Greitens or me about Cornejo?
Well, I agree with Eric Greitens in the fact that career politicians are harming this country. Now, in the state of Missouri, we have term limits. Robert's only served 4 years, 2 terms.
John Brunner went and run primary, and he called him a career politician.
And that's
So
I
clearly,
don't agree with that. I don't
Robert
agree with
would
him
qualify.
labeling John Brunner a career politician because as far as I know, this shows my ignorance in the whole political process. I think Brunner only ran one other race.
You're right.
So I don't agree with Greitens in the fact that Brunner was a career politician, but I do think that him not ever running before, not ever having a face in politics that the people of Missouri have seen, I think that's going to shift the tide here.
It's interesting. See, Robert, you look at the Republican caucus that you'll serve with. It must be challenging to be called corrupt, do-nothing, and an embarrassment, and then be asked for their endorsement.
Right.
Have you ever endorsed anyone that called you a corrupt, do-nothing embarrassment?
I haven't.
Peter Meredith, it's an interesting thing. Do you believe, I think there's an open debate now. Farm Bureau, Soybean Association, the corn growers, the cattlemen, they've picked the conservative in the race, and they've picked Chris Koster. Do you think you'll see a lag in your district with liberals? Or do you think they'll vote for Greitens or for another candidate?
Well, honestly, I think in my district, one of the things is people don't really know what Greitens is or what he stands for. That's where experience does matter. I mean, Koster has a record we can actually go based upon. And I think Koster's record is enough that my district is going to be strongly coming out for him.
I do think one thing you can honestly say is I haven't seen Chris Koster change positions on very many things from when he was a Republican, but he's probably more pro-choice than he was during his days in the Senate. I think that'll be an interesting thing. Let's talk about gun rights. Anna Kelly, I've heard you might be a supporter of the Second Amendment.
Yes. Might happen to have a gun store back at the office.
There you go. Those do-nothing corrupt embarrassments in Jeff City passed a concealed carry on college campuses.
Yes.
And what an interesting thing, of course, after Mizzou tried to open an abortion clinic, now they're trying to limit the concealed carry on campus. They come up with some really restrictive regulations, and Chris Koster sued Mizzou this week. Is that the kind of stuff that resonates in Wright County?
It absolutely does the common goals of protecting our constitutional rights. And I commend Mr. Koster for that. That's what we're supposed to go to Jefferson City for, is to protect the people. Not come in with our own agenda, but protect the people.
You inherit this dumpster fire at the University of Missouri that just keeps, in Missouri, most folks are pro-life, pro-gun, right? You're not going to run into very many people that win a statewide office that don't have some semblance of that. Mizzou, after the abortion thing, now they're trying to limit gun rights. The legislature passed. What do you do with it?
Well, I do agree that, something needs to be done, and I think the steps that Koster has taken so far, I agree with. However, I want to see him lead the fight. So many other times we've seen him make a big splash in the headlines by filing a lawsuit against Walgreens, filing a lawsuit against so-and-so, but then he backs off after he files the brief. So what I want to see him do is actually take the torch, lead the battle, and if he is our governor next year, I'd like to see a continuance of that.
What a bizarre world when the college Republicans are complimenting Chris Koster for holding up their legislative priorities. It's an interesting time. Steve Roberts, there is an argument that, and you're a prosecutor, have been,
Yes.
there is an argument we might not should have concealed carry on a college campus. Is it a little bit of an odd world when you see your nominee for governor being the one that's standing up for the Second Amendment?
Well, that's a great question. And to preface, I'm a Democrat. I am a firearm owner. I have my CCW permit. I think that we can put, and especially, Second Amendment rights are very important to Missourians, and I think we can put reasonable regulations into place that are fair to everyone. I don't think anyone wants, a bunch of untrained people walking around carrying concealed firearms. And, having gone through the class, it's not that, it's 8 hours of class, you pay a fee, and you're good to go. And I think that sort of training is very important now with relates to the Attorney General's suit. That suit's actually very narrowly tailored to, you've got a professor who wants to be able to carry his gun, but not in the classroom, leave it locked in his car. For him to be able to take into his classroom, into the university, they need authorization from the university to do that. And this suit from the Attorney General's office isn't attacking that. It's just supporting his right to keep it locked in his vehicle while he's at school. And that's something I understand.
I can't help but interject. I've been in real estate for 10 years, and I have to respectfully disagree because the Constitution says the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. And I want that professor to have the right to have it on his person to protect when that intruder comes into college. Because unfortunately, you turn on your news, it happens more and more every day, and it does no good sitting in the car, the lives that we might lose with it sitting in the car.
Well, you also look at places like Chicago. You look at all the other places that have the most strictest gun rights in America, and what are their murder rates? The highest in America. When I was a president of law school Republicans and the president of the Federalist Society back in law school, we had a guy by the name of John Lott come out and have a big discussion on his study, More Guns, Less Crime. And one of the aspects of the discussion that we had that day were college school attacks. You see all these different attacks on campuses where guns are not allowed. And I think I agree with Hannah entirely in the fact that these rights shall not be infringed. We have a God-given right to defend ourselves, whether that's using a stick against somebody using a stick against us, using fists against somebody using a fist against us, or defending ourselves by saying, hey, we're armed. If you want to come into our campus and try to attack us, you're going to be hit with the same thing you're hitting us with.
I got to jump in on this. I suspect I'm the most liberal on this issue at this table. I don't own a gun myself, and I'm not a big fan of guns. And frankly, the idea of adding a gun to every college fight between drunk frat boys seems like a bad idea to me. And honestly, I look at the Republican National Convention. They didn't allow guns in there. Why? Because they didn't want to be in danger.
That's an interesting point.
And I look at sending my kids to Mizzou. I'm not sure I'd want to send them to a place where that drunk frat boy down the street may be carrying a gun in his pocket when he gets in a fight.
Let's look at Texas.
But backing up, the point we were talking about was that the lawsuit itself is narrowly tailored. We're not talking about just the overall policy. The suit that the Attorney General is bringing forward, it's about enforcing the laws. I can disagree with the policy and still think he's doing his job as Attorney General in enforcing the laws that the legislature passed. So there are two different issues here that we're talking about, I think, and it's important to just keep that
Let me ask you a question,
distinction.
though. There is, liberals are known to pride themselves on being tolerant. I think the state's learned a lot and moved forward because of some tolerance that you have to credit with liberals in being on the forefront of. It seems like there's a problem in academia about being tolerant of the rest of the state. I would say the majority of the state that makes up the tax base that pays for that college is pro-gun. I think you can look at Jay Nixon's ads. You would not mistake him for being anti-gun. I wonder if there's not an issue of tolerance on a college campus for a different opinion of theirs. They want tolerance unless you're pro-gun.
Well, this is a little more than just an opinion, though. This is about having guns on campus. And personally, I'm a believer that if the school administration believes that their student body is safer without guns on campus or with more limitations on guns on campus, they're entitled to do that. Now,
Do you think they're
you're right that the
entitled
legislature made a different choice.
They feel like they're entitled to take the money from 6 million Missourians, but they don't want to abide by the laws those 6 million Missourians elected representatives pass.
Well,
if you're going to take the money, don't you have to pay the law?
And I think that's what this lawsuit's about.
Yeah.
That's Chris Koster's position, and I understand it. I think legally he is in a reasonable place.
Give me a quick take. Where do you think the race is now? Plus or minus what for whom?
Oh, goodness. Plus or minus 6 or 7?
For Koster?
Yeah.
Where do you think the race is now?
I'd agree.
About that? Where do you think the race is right now?
I'd have to be on the other side of it and say it'll be close, but I believe Brett Greitens can pull through down.
Oh, yeah, I think it's definitely a competitive race. Where do you think the race is now? I would say he's down. Greitens is probably down a little bit, but not.
I'd say Greitens is up maybe 3 points in this race.
Really, right now?
I think right now. I think he's coming from the momentum that he had in the primary, and I think that's why you really haven't seen a lot of him on the airways.
There's something to be said for his campaigns running full blast right on through the August finish line towards November. And Koster, you just can't be at full steam when you're not running,
absolutely.
right? I mean, it's not possible. No matter how good a candidate you are, hard to start from zero. Let's talk about the Senate race. It's a race because of how interesting the governor's race is and how interesting the presidential race is. It gets a little lost in the wash. But everything I see is about not Roy Blunt's policies, but about his family. It's a little bizarre almost.
Well, I think when you look at Mr. Blunt, he's been a figure of Missouri for a long time. He's been out in the district, even when I was campaigning in the primary, he's been out in the district several times already, and I've met him several times through the course of his own campaign. So he is somebody who actually knows the district, knows his constituents, and I think he's going to be incredibly safe because the people of Missouri feel safe with him.
I think he's from your neck of the woods in southeast Missouri, Senator Blunt is. It seems like he's the favorite. Do you see a way Donald Trump, who may be coming to St. Louis on Wednesday of this week, do you see a way Donald Trump wins Missouri and Roy Blunt doesn't?
I believe that they'll both come across and win.
It's an interesting race. Jason Kander clearly is a talented guy. I would say, I don't know about this cycle, this time, but if you had to put your chip on somebody that will be a U.S. Senator, will be a governor of Missouri, Jason Kander is probably somebody you'd have to give great odds on. This is an interesting campaign, though. It's not really talking about Roy Blunt as much as it is his family. And does that really connect with people?
You know, I'm not sure. I will like to say about Jason Kander. He's served faithfully 2 terms as Secretary of State for Missouri, coupled with his military experience. I mean, I think he's an exceptional candidate to move Missouri
You're
forward.
from a high-profile family that's done a lot for the state and for St. Louis.
I appreciate that.
But it seems like attacking your family would be a bizarre way to attack you. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's an odd dichotomy. Peter Meredith, it's an interesting thing to me that the race seems to not be as much about who's for what and what do you want to do for the state, but about the senator's family. And
So frankly, that hasn't actually been my experience of the race. I'm not entirely familiar with what you're talking about. I suspect we're talking about the records of his
the
family
ad
members.
campaigns, yeah.
And I don't see TV ads for the most part.
I think that you're the lone person that I think everybody has.
I think my
respect
district
in that
mostly
regard.
misses those. So.
Do you think there's a way Donald Trump wins Missouri and Roy Blunt doesn't?
Absolutely. I think that Hillary, unfortunately, carries with her a lot of negatives in Missouri that are longstanding that I don't think Kander has.
That's a
I
good
mean,
point.
Kander's already won statewide in Missouri twice. He's a veteran. He's a smart young guy. I think that he plays better to Missourians than Hillary does, unfortunately.
Moving to
for her.
last takes. Give me 10 seconds on something.
Vote. In November.
Give me your last take on something.
On the race there, it was once said that if you have a completely personal attack, there's no political argument left. And that's why I believe that Blunt will pull through and he'll
Interesting.
win.
Make sure I give me your take on something.
My take is that we need prayers, thoughts with our first responders, men and women in blue, whether abroad or here.
And we will see you back here next week. We'll have 2 likely incoming senators on and obviously our opinion maker panel next week on This Week in Missouri Politics.